G'day everyone, welcome back to another episode of the Australian Property Investment Podcast. I'm your host, Aaron Christie David, and I run a mortgage broking business called Attilio Wealth. But the idea behind our podcast is to help investors build their confidence and build their knowledge. And as part of building knowledge, we like to bring in an expert and what I call best in breed into the studio. And today I'm joined by Nathan Battishall. G'day Nathan, how you doing?
Good mate, thanks for having me.
Mate, an absolute pleasure to have you here. And I've been eagerly looking forward to our catch up because not only the amount of knowledge but the amount of experience that you've built in your time with Duplex Building Design, your business. Want to try and steal as much knowledge out of your head and share that with our listeners today, mate. So I understand you've been running your business for probably just under 20 years, so
Yep.
2 decades of experience. You've been there, you've done that, you've seen it all, and that's that kind of gold that we want to get out of your head as well. And as part of your wheelhouse, we're talking subdivisions, we're talking duplex builds, we're talking land, we're talking developments. So there's a lot of different projects that you've worked on. There's probably a lot of different investors that you've been, probably from the newer investor, the developer, to the more experienced. I think we had a chat that you've worked with someone on 30 different projects. So their evolution is probably something you've been on the journey with as well. But before we do kick off, it's what I call the 3 Ps. A little about yourself personally, profession, and your own property journey as well. If you want to share and divulge a little bit, mate.
Yeah, for sure. Well, personally, a little bit about me. I think I mentioned to you, I grew up actually, funnily enough, in a country town west of Dubbo.
Yeah, beautiful site.
So I'm a country boy, but found myself living on the south coast. So I live in Kiama with my wife.
So if you don't know Kiama, it's one of the gorgeous south coast villages, and an absolute superstar during COVID as well, as you're aware of.
That's it. Yeah, beautiful part of the world. We love it. So I'm there with my wife.
Wonderful.
And we've got 4 kids. So we had our fourth and last little COVID baby.
There you go, mate. There's a busy household, right?
It sure is. I'm one of 6. My wife's an only child, it's a bit of a happy medium.
Yeah.
And look, we love the South Coast. We love Kiama, so we're involved in a lot with sports, kids sports, and in the community. Yeah. I'm a keen spear fisherman.
Oh, so nice one.
Plenty of great spots around Kiama.
Yeah.
So that keeps me busy, and just an avid sports person. Love sport, playing it, supporting it, watching it.
If it's on, you'll watch it.
That's it. So my wife gets a bit sick of it. Football season and cricket season. There's very, very rarely ever any respite.
Bernie says the same thing. It's like the weekends, the TV's yours. I'm like, yeah, pretty much. Thursday night onwards, I own it. So
that's for sure. So, look, that's a little bit about me personally.
Professionally, about your business journey?
Yeah, look, my business journey, I've been 20 years in the architectural sort of building design game.
Yep.
Started working in Dubbo, an architectural firm in Dubbo. And about 5 years in, I started my own business. So I've had my own business 15 years now.
Yeah.
On and off, worked in different sort of spheres, sometimes commercial, industrial, residential. About 6-7 years ago, we decided to niche down to investors and developers.
Fantastic.
Within our company, I just saw an opportunity to really niche down. We've still got an arm of our business where we work with sort of people's dream homes and commercial projects and that sort of thing, but I saw a real need to service and serve mum and dad investors, developers, builder developers, and so we really geared our business that way.
Fantastic. So, I think we were just saying before, hyper niching or specialisation is so underrated in business. Instead of being everything to everyone, it's we're this for a particular type of client, and they then go, these guys are the experts, they get me, for example, and it's such a good connection and marriage, effectively, isn't it?
That's right. And, being able to understand their pain points, their key needs, how they think, what they're looking for in an architectural sort of service. It just enabled us to really drill down on who we were serving.
Beautiful.
Rather than just have this blanket sort of throw the net out and see what can come in. So, and for me, I just love development. I love property. I love investment. It really gets me up in the morning. So essentially, it doesn't feel like a job these days. It's really a passion as well.
And not a job because you are now leading a team as well.
That's it. Yeah. That's it. So we're leading a team in that sphere. So in terms of that, so it probably leads me into my own sort of property journey as well. I've spent so long helping other people sort of develop property.
We put ourselves last, right?
That's it. And I thought one day it just dawned on me. I thought, why on earth am I not doing this myself?
Totally.
I'm helping other people generate wealth and generate sort of portfolios and properties. So a couple of years ago, it sort of led me to take a step out of the boat, so to speak. So that took us on a bit of a journey of doing our own property developments. So so starting off just with small things like duplex. And then took a big step and did a big 23-lot land subdivision.
Unreal.
In Western Sydney. In Austral, right near the Badgerys Creek Airport.
Hasn't that area changed? I mean, I've driven out there and like, this was farmland, and there is still parts of it. You're driving past cows and horses when you're out there, but you look at what's coming. I think Amazon's got their big hyper warehouse out there as well.
That's right. Well, you've only got to see the infrastructure there now, the roads. And you just think, okay, that area is obviously it's obviously the growth spot of Sydney now, I guess. So look, that took us on a bit of a journey of understanding property options to land subdivisions and the real need for developing a dream team, so to speak, when it comes to developments. So look, and at the moment, in terms of what we're doing, we've got a little site in Flinders near Shell Harbour. We actually break soil the end of this month. We've been delayed about 2 months with all the rain, but we're doing a triplex, so 3 terraces. We got that done as a CDC, approved in 2 weeks, so no council.
Unreal.
So that was great. So we'll do.
So for the uninitiated, for example, because I mean this just rolls off your tongue. CDC would be.
CDC it's a complying development. So what it is, the state government brought in this new code called the Low Rise Diversity Housing Code. In about 2020, and what it did, it enabled fast track approvals, where they were finding local government quite often there were too many delays in small type developments, whether it be duplexes or small sort of triplexes or townhouses or terraces.
And I guess to a small extent it was like the granny flat, right? Because even then it was like if certain square meterage on your property, you can go and put a granny flat on the back as well.
That's it. And even in 2008 when the housing code came in, the housing SEP, which enabled you to get a house approved without council through a certifier. Essentially this now is a game changer, meaning that we can do duplexes and small sort of medium density developments now without the delays of going through council.
Great.
And we can get fast track approvals, meaning you don't have the holding cost delays of 3, 4, 5, 6, 12 months in council.
And it's not at the time, but it's the lack of momentum, it's the frustration sometimes, or the rework that happens off the back of that council approval.
That's exactly right, and it's so hard to predict in terms of, especially if you are borrowing. A lot of people are now borrowing private money as well. And it's just so hard if you need to have it approved in 6 months, but you're not guaranteed with the council.
Correct.
Whereas it's a little bit more predictable.
And you've got to have a couple of bottlenecks. So you've got council approval. Now it's weather, for example, when battered by rain. And then the next one is building. I think we're having a chat about it's a blessing and a curse for a lot of builders, which is they're super busy, rising costs, for example, team are hard to get, contractors and subbies. And so all that you kind of compound on top. And every client that we've got that is building, we're hearing those same, I won't say frustrations, but the same kind of sentiment and stories coming through as well.
That's it. There's definitely a lot of delays. And I guess the beauty is in our business too, because I am doing projects myself, it's a lot easier to emphasise with your clients, and there's skin in the game too.
I love it.
Like for me, we're actually on the coalface doing it ourselves as well, so it's so much easier to serve your customer. And for us, we know the importance of moving things quickly as well.
Great.
Because you can't be having sort of months and months of delays in design time or in approval time. So for us, we're constantly looking at ways we can improve our productivity as a team, the speed of what we do, and obviously efficiency as well.
Excellent.
And how can we actually remove some of those bottlenecks, whether it be with council, a pre-DA meeting, or possibly engaging some more competent consultants, for example, a town planner. Just little things that can just keep things moving. So for us, that's been a really key thing. I was lucky enough to get a site at Talumbar.
Oh, wonderful.
Before the market sort of went a bit crazy. So we were able
it's a tale of two, you call it a tale of two cities, tale of two investors, for example, right? Pre the boom or post the boom?
That's it. Definitely pre the boom. We were able to get a site at Talumbar, which is we'll do 5 townhouses on that site. Again, it's been delayed. The settlement of that property's been delayed, which hasn't actually worried us, to be honest. We're not ready for it. But it's been delayed until the end of the year. But for that one there, we were able to look at some creative ways to actually move an APZ, like a bushfire protection zone, further back, which gave us an extra townhouse. Oh, wow. Which was terrific.
Yeah.
But for that one there, I think we paid a bit over $300,000 for the land, so we're getting... we're paying near to nothing for the land. So even if we just land bank it for a while and sit on it, if just depending on what the market does.
Yeah.
So that's an excellent one, and we got a block of land at Bermagui on the south coast.
Lovely.
For a duplex, ocean view. Again, it's been delayed, the settlement, which we're not too worried about. We won't settle until next year, late next year. So that's just one we're sitting on.
I mean, some people get frustrated by delays in settlement. And I've had a chat with a couple of clients. I'm like, look, the longer this goes on, sometimes it works in your favour that you're not having to pay any interest, but it's appreciating in value as well.
That's it.
It's I guess perspective, how you look at it, going, yep, you want to maybe turn some dirt over and start building.
Yep.
Or you just go, look, this is kind of working in our favour. We're not paying anything for it.
Yep.
We can get our designs done. We can get a read on the market, for example, and then be ready if you want to sell the land or move on and build.
That's it. And there's creative ways. Like I've got one particular client, very switched on guy. He'll go and buy 3 blocks in a new subdivision, say 18 months away from being released.
Yeah.
He'll go and get those 3 blocks. He'll only develop 1, sell 2, sort of as soon as it registers. And I've seen him actually be able to then buy his land, have his land unencumbered.
Yeah, nice.
Or at least have a fair bit of equity already in that property he's going to develop.
Yeah, okay.
Just purely because quite often I've seen him add sort of 50 to 100K on each block.
Yeah, okay.
Time and time again. Sometimes you lose out, but more often than not, I've seen him do really well. And that's just one of many strategies, creative strategies I get to see in what we do.
So. Yeah. So let's talk strategy, because that's one thing I want to have a chat about. And particularly for the first timer, because I feel like someone like yourself has now become a little bit more accessible.
Yes.
And you've mentioned before mum and dad's.
Yep.
So my house value's gone up, I've got a good amount of equity, and I'm like, well, I could go and buy one dwelling, one freestanding house in a suburban location. That's great and get a decent yield. Or I could think a little bit more commercially and go, right, I'm going to buy a good block, bigger block, maybe put a duplex, triplex on there as well, and then kind of get better bang for my buck.
Yeah.
So if I'm a first-time developer or aspiring developer, where do you start in terms of your initial consultation and your strategic insights as well?
Yeah, look, we get a lot of mum and dad investors who, they're working great jobs, but they know that if they want to really truly generate wealth, they need to have something happening on the side. Yeah. And I find a duplex is a perfect way to kickstart your journey. You don't want to go too crazy. I always find sort of stick to 2, maybe maximum 4.
Also, the first one is that not a make or break, but it can set you up or it can set you back.
That's it. Yeah. That's it. And so I've found 2 to 3 is perfect. Maybe 4, but generally stick to a duplex or possibly a triplex or 3.
Yeah.
It's a lot more manageable, a lot more predictable. And like for us, the key is just to minimise as much risk as possible, and that's where we try and sort of drum into the heads of our mum and dad investors when they come in, is to make sure that when you're doing your costing that you're being very conservative. For example, if this is the build costs, add 7 or 8% on top of that again.
Great.
We always add 5% contingency.
Yeah.
That's what I recommend people to do.
Okay.
We even help people sort of work out a bit of a feasibility.
Fantastic.
There's some great courses out there now for investments and developments, and there's some great education out there now that people can go and put themselves into.
Yeah.
But for us, we always sort of encourage people to make sure there's lots of contingency. Don't just go off what the real estate agents tell you in terms of what a property can sell for. Go and do your own research, get your comparables, and then again, make sure you're conservative on that as well, and make sure that, for me, it's just making sure that first one you do, I think personally, every project you do, but especially early on.
Well, it's a tip for new players. Like, it's the rookie errors that you're going to
That's
see.
it.
Yeah.
That's it. And just ensuring that you set a bar in terms of the margins that you're wanting to get out of that project, and making sure you stick to it, and then coming up with a strategy as well of what you're planning to do. Are you planning to sell or hold, or keep one, sell one? We're getting a lot of people now in this market who've got a bit of equity in their own personal property they're living in a great suburb, and they're happy to live in a duplex for a while. So they're basically living in one and renting one out as a bit of a kickstart into their journey. It doesn't suit everyone, but for young couples or downsizers and that sort of thing. But even what we can fit into a duplex now, a lot of the duplexes we design are quite often as big as a
freestanding house.
Standard
I think
house.
The design I've seen on some of the newer ones, I'm like, they've got interior designs that have come through that have made it very livable, very open plan as well. So you don't feel like, I think the old style it almost felt like a narrow apartment.
Yeah, that's it.
A narrow, long apartment. Whereas now it's like, this is a house in its own right. There's a beautiful fence. It's almost that privacy that you want. Outdoor, the outdoor barbecue. So I guess all those amenities that make it feel like a home. But you're getting bang for your buck as the developer, that you got two homes on one block, right?
That's it. And we're just finding since COVID, a lot of people now are wanting to minimise debt. And look for ways to actually chew away at their mortgage, and to be able to go and do investments and developments, and look at ways to generate more wealth. And it's a terrific way.
Oh, fantastic. You touched on before, what's the strategy? Is it buy and hold? Is it buy and sell one? Is it buy and rent one out? When you're doing your numbers, is this conversation coming up? Because I guess the mantra is start with the end in mind. For a lot of people. It's like, and that often comes down to how they're buying it. Should they buy it through a company? Should they buy it through a trust, through a unit trust? And it's a little bit of the unknown. I'm not sure what's going to happen. And it's like, well, I think we need to get a little bit of clarity as to what you're looking to do. Are you looking to buy and sell both? In the example, say a duplex, sell both. Are you looking to buy, hold one, rent one out, for example? So where, from your experience, have you had those chats early on? And
definitely. I think it's really important, and especially from our side of the fence as a designer, it's important we know that, because if their strategy is to sell both, well, there's certain things that we can put into that design to ensure that it not only sells, but it sells for top dollar. There's certain things where you don't want to overcapitalise on.
So if you're going to turn it into a rental, you probably wouldn't have the bells and whistles potentially if you're going to kind of sell it to an owner-occupied appeal.
That's it. And if their strategy is to own it for quite a while, well, there's certain things we probably don't need to go as crazy on. For example, the facade. We can still do a nice facade, but if you spend an extra $40,000 on your facade, I don't believe you're going to gain that back in rental return. You'll probably get similar rent, maybe $10 more.
Because that's not really, the tenant isn't going to value the facade, they're going to value the amenities on the property.
That's right. So and I think that's where, and you'll hear me talk a lot about that, is just stripping the emotion away, and it's hard. For a first-time mum and dad investor, a more experienced developer probably understands this, but it's educating our mum and dad investors especially that you need to strip away a lot of the emotion from these projects and see it as an actual investment, see it as a development.
I'm glad you say that, because, and I think it's a little bit tone deaf sometimes to go, it's just about the numbers. No, this is highly emotional. I think it's more emotional, because rationally it's like, I should invest and I should, plant some seeds for a better financial future. Cliche, right? But the idea is, we're taking a huge risk here. We're risking the equity. We're risking market conditions. We're risking rent conditions, for example, and the fear of the unknown. Build costs could then blow out.
That's right.
Delays, for example. Then you've got lifestyle issues. What happens if during that time you get pregnant and there's another child, you're down to one income? Lifestyle. And so to say it's not emotional, I'm glad you said it, because I'd say it's more emotional than it is rational.
100%. 100%. And I think, look, a lot of the times mum and dad investors are excited about doing their first development, which you should be. I think
absolutely.
I actually think it's one of the most addictive things you can do, development and investment. It's such a fun environment to be in.
Yeah.
But I've seen time and time again where people get so I guess they start looking at things of how we can improve this or make this better, and before we know it, we can blow the budget out by 50k or 100k, and it's just helping them to see, okay, by knowing what your strategy is it to hold, is it to rent, is it to sell one, rent one out?
Correct.
Or are you going to live in one and rent one out, or live in one and sell one?
Yeah.
Because quite often if you're going to live in one, well, you may make it a little bit more comfortable, a little bit more spacious. You can look at that sort of thing. But, and I'll share later on in the podcast a couple of case studies of where at times people have gone a little bit too far, or they've overcapitalised in certain areas, and it hits you in the back end.
I can speak from personal experience. We had a unit out in North Parramatta. I think my first property that I ever bought. So you get that the attachment. That's my first property. And then Bernadette was like, I think we should sell it. And I was like, you never sell your first property. And we did the numbers, like, why don't we sell it? So we moved in, did the reno, and, oh, mate, absolute uppercut when we went to sell it because we'd overcapitalised, and it's not what the market wanted. I think that was my first experience going, what we like and what we want to live in isn't necessarily what the market wants. Yeah. I mean, we put the beautiful wooden floors down, we cut the archways out, subway tiles in the kitchen, and the market didn't value that at all.
Yeah, which is hard to take.
Yeah,
especially when you put so much of your passion and excitement.
And you're like, who would want to live here?
Yeah, exactly. And it can really hurt. And I think that's the beauty of having a team early on. And we always say to mum and dad investors, it's important to have a great team.
So let's go there for a second. So the team. So I'll put myself in the shoes of, I'm a newer developer. I'm spotting an opportunity. What's the sequence then? Because do you have the team and then go out looking for a site? Do you find the site, then get the team quickly? Talk me through. What's the ideal?
Look, my thoughts are it's important to have a team early on. One thing we do a lot of now is we do feasibility calls where basically I get mum and dad investors, people wanting to go on that development journey, and they'll call, and I'll just do a bit of a strategy session with them and just let them know some of the things to look for, help educate them a little bit on, what are they looking to do?
Yeah.
And then encouraging them on the different type of sites to find based on their strategy or based on what they're looking to do. The beauty is then when they come back, we've already built a bit of a rapport, there's already a bit of a relationship there, and we've got a bit of a knowledge of what they're looking for. There's nothing worse, and I've had this happen only the week before last. I had someone come that already purchased a site, and it was straight away after getting a copy of the contract, I found sort of some serious flaws in this site, and I felt like they'd actually paid way over market value.
Right. So what flaws do you see? Because you're a trained eye, what flaws have you seen that then maybe they've overlooked?
Look, things like one very key one with duplexes is the slope of the land. For example, this site was a backward sloping block, so it was sloping from the road back. Now, there's no stormwater easement at the back of the block. There was no way to bring the water back to the road. So their only option was to negotiate an easement with the neighbour. This particular council doesn't allow absorption pits or anything other than getting the water directly to the street. Right. So the problem is they're then relying on neighbours behind them in order to get an easement. Now, sometimes that's possible, but it can be a very lengthy process. Now, these people, that wasn't an option to sort of take months and months and possibly years to negotiate that easement. They went and spoke to the neighbours, not interested. They then started offering money. It got up around $30,000, still not interested. Wow. So essentially, you've got a site you've paid duplex value for. Yes. That the maximum you can do is one dwelling. Now, it's already got a dwelling. They can rent it out, but they've paid above market value. Because they saw the upside in it, but there is upside, yeah. And in this market where site, you do have to get in quick. And this is the other challenge. Doing your due diligence, by that stage you've done it, the market it's gone, right? That's so again, we saw that going. They're trying to move pretty quickly, but you can't tick your boxes, dot your I's, cross your T's because the market was moving so quick. It's like you almost have to have the due diligence done before, and then it's going, okay, does this site
meet our requirements, so yes or no, isn't
That's right. That's it. And look, I've got one developer probably sends me 1 or 2 sites a week. And, quite often I've got to have the hard conversation with him and just say, look, it would hit great numbers if you're able to get it, but here's the issues. And then you leave that risk profile up to them in terms of whether they want to do it. Okay. I obviously give them my thoughts, my experience.
Which is why they're coming to you, right? They want that. They want that opinion. They want that advice as well.
That's it. And like, for example, by coming to us, I've got a team behind me as well. So I've got a great stormwater engineer, an excellent town planner. I've got a private certifier. I've got a great surveyor who's also a town planner. So I've got this background of team behind me who know that we need quick answers, because you can't be taking weeks and weeks to get due diligence back.
Lovely.
It's a matter of days.
Yeah.
But essentially, they're getting a whole lot of knowledge for that site. Then they can determine what they're going to do with that, and we know very quickly of whether a site's developable or not.
Nice.
And I think it's so vital, because I've seen time and time again where mum and dad investors have gone and bought a site without getting that knowledge and that backing. For example, trees are a big one. We've got a brilliant arborist who gives us quick due diligence. It's important because we had a client in Coma buy a site that it was just covered in huge native trees, and could you get them removed? Possibly, but you're not guaranteed. There's a lot of risk, and
I can imagine a tree would be a deal breaker. A client that's got to build around a tree.
Oh, massively.
It's their own home. So they had to make it work, but they had to reverse engineer the design because this build was non-negotiable. The tree was non-negotiable.
That's it. And even yesterday, I had a client in Bulli call up who wants to do a duplex, and straight away I went through the contract of the site with him, and we looked at it, and I just said, look, we'd need to do driveways on the side though on this one because there's a power pole in the middle. And he said, I didn't even think of that. They're just little things that we see every day, but the mum and dad investor, quite often they overlook certain things. So just by giving them really clear due diligence is so vital, and it just gives them the confidence then to go in and purchase the site. And I always say to our clients, look, for me, every site I look at, I want to look at it as if this was my own development site. Would I develop this? If I wouldn't develop it, why would I
give it to a client?
Or why would I encourage a client to do it?
Excellent.
Yeah.
And I mean, we've touched on it just briefly, so I just want to close the loop on it, which was the team. So you've got yourself. From when we've had clients go through the journey, architects, town planners, you mentioned arborists, for example.
Yes.
So take me through the team as they kind of sit and who's around the table.
Yeah, look, I call it your dream team. And look, I've seen some clients who like to, I guess, deal with all of those consultants on their own. But in all honesty, most of my clients, they're busy.
Correct.
They've got great jobs, they're great at what they do, and they just want to have someone they can work with who can help them generate wealth.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, that's my job is to help them develop a site that will generate them wealth.
Yeah.
So I always say you've got 2 key relationships in your development journey. One being your architect or designer, and 2 being your builder. I don't believe you need to have any other relationships. You've obviously got your mortgage broker, your accountant and that sort of thing. But when it comes to the actual, I guess, the development side of things, your 2 key people are your architect and your builder.
Yeah, great.
Because your builder's got their team during the build, but you only have to deal with the builder. And same thing with your architect. You get your architect, but underneath your architect, if they're good at what they do, they should have an excellent team behind them. And that's the key. So within that, do you want me to tell you about?
Go for it,
yeah. So for example, when you've got your architect, underneath that umbrella or within that team, your architect has a excellent town planner. Yeah. Someone who's got a really good understanding of controls, constraints for those particular councils. Understanding of the LEP, the local environment plan, the development controls of that council, and a good understanding of the constraints and what can and can't be done. Again, it's an extra sounding board to give your architect confidence when giving due diligence. Stormwater engineer or an engineer is really important, especially for things around stormwater, because I've seen stormwater be a huge deal breaker with development sites. Just looking at can you run, what type of system can you run for your stormwater? Because I've seen that can really hinder or hurt a development if you don't get the right due diligence.
Righto.
A certifier. It's important to have a good certifier, especially if you're going down the fast track route of complying development, like we spoke about earlier, which we're probably doing 60 to 70% of now when it comes to duplexes.
Righto.
So we get them to look at the contract as well, go through the contract in detail. And, it's important. I've had people come to me with a site, they don't have a contract. Now, within that contract, there's some really key things we're looking at. We're looking at what's called the 10.7 planning certificate.
Okay.
So that's distributed by the council.
Yeah.
That tells us if there's any constraints on the site.
Beautiful.
Tells us if we can or can't do compliant development. Tells us if it's bushfire affected or flood prone, or whether it's got sort of critical habitat, or if there's some sort of constraint that's going to hinder or impact the development. And then underneath that as well, we want to see the 88B, which is an instrument in there that tells us if there's any conditions, if there's any covenants on the block, if there's anything that's actually... Sometimes you'll see covenants on a block that hinder more than one dwelling.
Yes.
And I've had clients, unfortunately, buy land without having their conveyancer or their solicitor or a town planner or their designer clearly go through the covenants on that contract.
Yeah.
And
maybe it comes down to the brief, because I just have a look through the contract, but sometimes if you don't know what you're looking for, it's easy to overlook because the trained eye wasn't going there. It's like, that's why you've got to, again, we keep going back to it, a very clear brief, get your team organised. So if it's your solicitor or your conveyancer, tell them what you're looking to do.
That's it.
If it's the accountant, tell them what what entity you want to buy through. That then dictates how you get your finance. Is it a buy hold? Is it a buy sell, for example? And then it feeds into your sphere, which is the actual build project and how to get that from go to woe.
Yeah, that's it. And I think, we've got a really great conveyancer who specialises in property, and I've found that's really important because I've seen...
Absolutely. People just go for a cheap... you don't want a cheap conveyancer.
No, that's it.
You just don't want a cheap anything, really. But a cheap conveyancer, they're going to get it done. And because it was, again, speed, quick and dirty, it was like, yep, good to go, no issues here, and the detail got overlooked.
That's it. And it's and we've picked it up time and time again, where either myself or the town planner or the certifier has looked at it and said, well, there's some issues here, and the conveyancer's completely missed it. So that's another key thing. Get a conveyancer who specialises in property.
Well said.
Really important.
Yeah, well said. I just want to go back because you said something before. I don't care about time, but I want to get this knowledge. You said you had a couple of case studies or a couple of examples of client stories that you worked on. So I know that obviously confidential when clients are dealing with you, but there's lessons that you've learnt and examples that you've seen. So can you share the good, the bad, the ugly with us?
Yeah, for sure. Well, I'll start with a positive one. Yeah, great. One that went really well. This particular one was in a suburb called Kembla Grange. Now, it's a new estate. The client bought a block of land. I think they paid about $380K.
Yeah, okay. So I'm assuming that's pre-pandemic as well. Yeah,
pre-pandemic, so pre-boom. Really good price. They wanted to do a dual occupancy. Now, this block was over 600 square metres. The new housing code had just come out for the CDC.
Yep.
And we looked at it, and yes, they could do a dual occupancy, but we said to them, look, you can do 3. You can do a triplex, CDC, no council, fast track approval. And, that quite often, for me, that's the way to make money, is to get more on the land, because to get more on the land, you lower the value of the land. That's where you can get the uplift. Yeah. So we're able to get 3 on that site. 3-4 bedders too.
Wow, so I mean proper, proper.
Yeah, 2 of them with double garages.
Unreal.
So straight away it went from a dual.
That's a good use of space. We're talking 600 square metres, and you got.
Yeah, I think it was 620. So it was unreal. It was just over the threshold to be able to do multi-dwelling. Yeah. But the beauty of the terraces under the low-rise housing code is we can, on an R2 site in that particular area, we can use 60% of the site. They call it floor space ratio when it comes to a DA. Yep. Normally you get 50% as a DA. Under the CDC we can get 60. Unreal. So straight away there's an extra 10% of the site that we can turn into habitable space. So that one there was terrific. We were able to do 3 dwellings, paid $380 for the site. Spent just over $1 million on the build. Yeah. and they're able to sell one dwelling for $820K.
Unreal.
So they only sold one,
Yeah.
and now they've got 2 properties. They're just going to rent them out with very minimal debt attached to them.
Well done.
So it's just a great development. For me, that was just a successful development where someone's now got minimal debt on 2 properties.
They've got the confidence to then go again.
That's it.
Yeah.
That's it. And they've got plenty of equity then to use those properties.
Yeah, correct.
And just go and do the next one then. And,
Yeah.
it's just a great setup for a terrific project.
Yeah, nice.
And there's so many different things you could have done with that. You could have sold 2, completely got rid of your debt, unencumbered, have one to use as a rental. But in that case, I just thought it made sense to
well done.
just to have a small mortgage on each one.
Yeah.
And then just keep going.
Yeah.
So, and I think they get over $600 a week.
Fantastic.
Each property. So
Yeah.
$1,200 a week in rent. So that was a terrific one.
Yeah.
Another one, and look, we've had a few of these where this particular one in Albion Park, client wanted to do their dream house on it. All of a sudden they realised every second person in that whole estate were doing duplexes. So they wanted to do this nice big forever home.
Yeah.
And I felt, you feel for people when that happens because they didn't want to be surrounded by duplexes and all that. And I get that.
Yeah.
This was going to be their forever home. They bought the block, had some bushfire constraints on it. So a whole bunch of things came against them. But we showed them that you can turn this around. Why don't you do it as a development or investment, do really well out of it, and then use the equity of that to move on and do your next project. But look, in this particular case, this is where I talk about not being emotionally invested into the project.
Yeah.
Where we sort of recommended for the duplexes to be a certain size. It was in a suburb of Albion Park, so you didn't want to go too high end. You didn't want to go over invest.
Yeah.
But the client had a particular style, a particular way they wanted to do things, and as much as our job is to recommend certain things. At the end of the day, it's not our site, it's not our project.
Yeah, we can lead a horse to the water.
That's it.
Yeah,
and it's challenging because I always establish a budget with a client, and our team know that as well. We establish a budget with a client, and we let them know that but by making this bigger, you're going to overcapitalise, you're going to overinvest. This is your budget. This is what you've told us your budget is. Anyway, this particular project just kept growing.
Yeah, right.
And we kept warning.
Yeah.
And the style of the project became a lot more high end than what it should have been.
Okay.
Just because you can use a certain amount of square meterage on a site, just because you can use 50% of the floor space ratio of a site in particular areas, it doesn't necessarily mean you should use it all and max it out. Because for me, the market, a 4-bedroom duplex, whether it's 220 square metres or 160 square metres, it's still a 4-bedroom duplex.
Yeah. Okay.
Now, in certain areas, you can make it more spacious, but often you'll overcapitalise.
Yeah.
I always say, is the money better off in your pocket, or is it better off in the real estate agent or the builder's pocket? Or I'd rather it in your pocket.
Yeah.
And this particular investment, look, it just kept growing. And again, the client became very emotionally invested. It wanted to make it a lot more high end. And by the end of it, it was tough to see. But at the end of the day, there was a lot of warnings, but they just wanted to go that way. And they got it all priced up, was all approved. And, it just wasn't going to be feasible. They would have just broken even if they built it and developed it. So in the end, they sold the DA approved site.
Right.
They made a little bit of money, not much, covered their costs, got a little bit back.
Yeah.
It's a lot of effort for that result. And a builder, it really only made sense then for a builder developer who can rely on the builder's margin as well.
Yeah.
But that was a prime example of someone who just probably should have relied a little bit more on some of the advice they were getting both from real estate agents, from the designers. And not that we see a lot of that, but look, I've also seen people that have done that and learnt that lesson as well and become incredible investors, though, as a result of actually getting stung. Yeah. Where you sort of didn't listen to the team around you. And for us, it's a hard one because we want to obviously keep people happy and give them an incredible result. But at the same time, as I said, I always try and look at a project as if this was my development, how would I look at it?
Yeah.
And the only reason I share that story is because I think when you're a first-time investor or developer, there can be a tendency to lean that way and find yourself over-capitalising in certain areas that you're not going to get that return on.
It's a great saying, all bad ideas start as a good idea, right?
That's it.
So I think that's where it comes. It comes from a place of I want to succeed, I want to do well, but then it's like somewhere along the lines it becomes blurred lines, and it's like we need to rein you back in a little bit, and you're just going too far, and sometimes it's too optimistic. And I think we even spoke about sometimes over optimism or overconfidence can actually work against you as well. You're like, what do they call it, the hot hand fallacy, for example. And it's like, you come a little bit bulletproof, and it's like, well, one bad decision can set you back. One good or great decision can kind of accelerate you as well. It's finding that sweet spot to go, yep, we may say no, and I can put my hand up. We said no to Hobart, I don't know, 5 or 6 years ago, and kicked ourselves. But at that stage, Hobart had done nothing for 10 years, and it was like, what's going on here? And our buyer's agent could see something, we just couldn't see it. And the blind spot, sometimes you're paying people to have a look at your blind spot as well, isn't it?
That's it.
Yeah.
That's it. And I think that's the key in having a great team is to actually have the hard conversations.
Yeah.
And look, it's difficult to do at times.
Totally.
To tell someone that, hey, your ideas are going to blow the budget out. And it's a hard conversation to have, but I'd rather a hard conversation early in the piece than that hard conversation where someone has gone ahead and done it their way and ends up just breaking even worse, losing money on a project. And it's not, for me it does. I don't want to see any of our clients losing money on a project.
Oh, likewise. And that's the ethos and philosophy that will keep you around for a really long time, Nathan. I want to say thank you very much. I'm always going to preempt it, so we're going to get you back on at some point. And
love to.
And I think what we want to almost do is pull out a couple of real life examples and say, look, here's a site, here's some numbers, and we can almost do a bit of a live example on how you go through. I think that would be super helpful for a lot of people. Because we can talk about it, people can watch this, for example, but actually seeing some numbers and going through an example, like a real life case study, that's going to almost open people's eyes to, okay, and I can speak for myself, when we've looked at our own development sites, it started out as a good idea, did the numbers, put the contingencies, like there's no margin in this. And if we did it ourselves, like just your story there, we'd have got to the very end, burnt a lot of time and a lot of energy and people's expertise on the way going, but it was never a project to begin with as well.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. Mate, thank you very much for coming in.
Thanks for having me.
Really appreciate it. If you've loved Nathan's conversation and his insights, we're going to include his contact details and his team's information if you want to reach out, get in touch with them as well. You speak from the heart. So for me, I'm like, there's no sales approach. There's don't pick us. It's going, we're one of many businesses, but your heart's in the right place. I want to say well done and congratulations on your success. That's another episode wrapped up for the Australian Property Investment Podcast. If you found it helpful, please leave us a review or drop us a line and tell us if you've got any questions. We'd love to help you answer those as well. Until next time, take care.